Hey, welcome to the channel. If you're brand new here, I'm Tim. I upload new videos every week all about running. Today, we're looking at a neutral trail shoe by Altra. It's the Olympus 4.0. Let's take these bad boys for a run, and then we'll meet back here and we'll talk about it in greater detail. Hey, so I had a great run in these shoes. Let's start with the bad news first, and that's the cost. These run 170 U.S. and that's a lot of cash for a trail shoe. I think the way that Altra is able to justify the additional expense, not just through the number of updates that they've had from the previous version of the shoe, but it's the build quality and just how many miles that you can expect to get out of this shoe. So I think over time, yes, you'll get your money's worth, but that's a lot of cash to lay out front for a trail shoe. $170 is a lot of cash. Now let's take a closer look at the shoe, and I like to start with the uppers on the shoes. And as we look at around that toe box, you can see that the upper itself is pretty lightweight and breathable in terms of a trail shoe. Now this shoe is heavy. Just overall total weight, it comes in at 11.6 ounces or 329 grams. Yep, 329 grams. So it is a beast of a trail shoe. And that extra weight that comes in with that shoe, it really isn't necessarily associated with the engineered mesh upper that we're looking at now. What they did do, however, is lightened up the material that the upper is made of, but they put some plastic overlays. You'll see those around the toe box, and all of that white material that goes up around through to the heel counter. That's a plastic overlay. So they brought that plastic overlay up a bit higher on the shoe itself, and that's to give you some protection as you're out running. As you know, if you're a trail runner, there's a lot of obstacles out there, a lot of sticks and things that can certainly tear up your shoes and potentially cause you some issues. So it gives you a little bit of extra protection, just a slightly higher up on the shoe, which I think is a terrific thing to do. You'll also notice that as we look at that toe box area, that little metal ring that's there, and we'll look at more of what this is associated when we get back to the heel counter, but that's to attach a gaiter. And if you're not familiar what that is, it's basically like a little pup tent that you can put up around your ankles and up a little bit high on your foot. That'll help keep all of the debris, whether it's stones or in my case, I live in Michigan, and I'm looking forward to trying these shoes out in the winter months. It's going to be a a beast of a shoe out there in the snow. And sometimes when I'm out running, I got to run through some snowbanks here. And believe it or not, in Michigan anyway, winter is always just a few months away, so it won't be long. And I'll be faced with some snow drifts out on the sidewalks again. And I think that running in these shoes with the Gator will help protect my feet from those elements. And also along those lines, you'll see that they've got some slits in the toe box area, and those are actually to let the water drain out of your shoe. So if you do pick up moisture, you do pick up some water from your runs, it has a place to go. And these shoes are made to go the distance. So it wouldn't be unheard of for you to be picking up some of that kinds of debris and just things from the elements that get caught up in your shoes over time. So let's take a look at the Eyelet Chain. You can see that they've done a good job here. It does more than adequate about keeping your foot feeling pretty secure in the shoe out on your runs, or if you're using these to hike or walk. I felt pretty secure in these all the way from that midfoot back to my heel. The one notable thing I will mention before we get too far is Altra's known for basically two things when it comes to their shoe designs. First is the shoe itself is shaped like your foot is shaped. And that gives you plenty of room in that toe box area so that you can splay your toes if you need to give you a little extra balance, especially if you're going downhill or something along those lines. You get to use your toes as they were intended to do, so you have plenty of room to do that. And then the other thing to note about the Altra shoes is that they are flat. Now that doesn't mean that they are necessarily without cushion. This shoe has 33 millimeters of cushion in that midsole, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute as well. So let's continue with the upper. You'll see around the heel collar as well as that heel tab, it has lots of cushion there to keep your feet comfortable. Altra shoes, they're built to go the distance. These are long distance trail shoes. And by long distance, we're talking 50 miles, 100-mile runs, and they're designed to keep your feet comfortable. And that's part of the reason why this particular shoe is a max cushion shoe, that they have that 33 millimeters of stack height of foam in that midsole. And that's to help keep your feet comfortable on these long, long runs. Now looking at the tongue is gusseted, so it is sewed in, and that does a great job of keeping it in place. It's relatively flat, but it has a little bit of cushion up there towards the top. Overall, I found it to be a great fit and very comfortable. Now let's look at that heel counter. And you'll see that it has some heavy-duty plastic overlays, and that helps keep your heel in place. I found it to be comfortable, and I did feel, like I said earlier, have a locked-in feel to wear it when I wore the shoes. And moving right into that midsole that we talked about just briefly a minute ago, having a flat or a zero drop in your shoe is a huge advantage, I think, in this case. You've got 33 millimeters of foam from heel all the way to your toes. So you've got all of that extra foam up around your midfoot and forefoot area that you wouldn't necessarily find in other shoes. Not to mention that there's a lot of conversation about having heel drops in your shoes being harder on your joints than necessarily a flatter shoe like the Altra is, where it's made to mimic more of your natural foot strike. So now let's take a look at the outsole of the shoe. They've got what they call Vibram Mega Grip, and that stuff is sticky around, and you'll see that around the shoe. So it goes from the toe back to the midfoot, on the edges of the shoe, and then around in that heel area, and that gives you lots and lots of traction out on the road. And if you just put them on, and you might be walking around your house on, your wood floors, or even if you're out, you put them on and you head outside and you're walking on pavement, you can not only feel how sticky that Vibram Mega Grip is, but you can actually hear it. It just sticking to the ground. So lots and lots of traction, which is terrific when you're out on the trails, especially if you're on some wet material, which it oftentimes is. Especially you get in the morning runs or evening runs, and you got the dew that's still sitting out on the grass. This Vibram Mega Grip does a terrific job in making you feel secure out there on those trails, especially, as I mentioned, with wet conditions. The other thing to note about the outsole of the shoe is you'll notice that they basically split the shoe in half back towards that heel area. And that's primarily to give you almost what I would call an independent suspension. So if you were to step on a rock on one side of your heel, it'd have a little more give to it, so you'd be less likely to turn an ankle, for example. And they did that same thing up in the forefoot area as well. You'll see that they have those slits or cutouts in that outsole area. And again, that's to give you a little bit more of an independent suspension, so that as you hit rough terrain, rocks, and so on, that you are less likely to injure yourself as a result of doing so. And then finally, just one last note. Earlier, I pointed out the metal ring that's up around that eyelet chain, or at the base of the eyelet chain. On the back of the shoe is the Gaiter Trap, and that's the Velcro piece that you also would attach your gaiter to again, shelter your feet from any debris, rocks, and things that could otherwise get kicked up and end up in your shoe, which could spoil a run pretty quickly. Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, give it a little love. As always, run tall, run strong, and thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.